At the deepest known point on Earth, the ocean descends into a realm so extreme that even the idea of life begins to feel uncertain. A place so deep that if the tallest mountain on Earth were lowered into it, its summit would still disappear beneath the water, erased by distance alone. This is the Mariana Trench, the deepest known boundary on our planet. Here, the ocean floor drops to nearly 7 miles below the surface, farther down than commercial aircraft ever travel above the ground. Depth stops feeling like measurement and begins to feel like weight. At the bottom, the pressure becomes overwhelming, more than 1,000 times greater than what we feel at sea level. It is strong enough to destroy unprotected human tissue instantly. Metal bends, glass fails. Nothing built for the surface is meant to remain intact here for long. The water is just above freezing, and the darkness is complete. Sunlight never arrives, color fades away. Even time feels different in a place where nothing changes quickly. By every expectation we once held, this should be an empty world, and yet it isn't. Again and again, instruments lowered into the depths have detected life. Not imagined life, not theoretical life, but movement, signals, and presence recorded quietly by cameras and sensors designed for something else. Some of what has been found does not look like the animals we know. Bodies are softer, structures are reduced, familiar features disappear, replaced by forms shaped almost entirely by pressure and patience. Life here does not rush, it does not compete loudly, it endures. Scientists once believed there was a final cutoff point, a depth beyond which complex life simply could not exist. That belief did not slowly dissolve, it broke each time a descent returned with evidence that survival had continued where it was never expected. Tonight, we're slipping past a boundary few humans have ever crossed to explore the strangest creatures living in the Mariana Trench. But before we begin, if you enjoy these calm explorations into the deep sea, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like and perhaps tapped subscribe. It helps other curious dreamers find their way to this peaceful little corner of the internet. And if you'd be so kind, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it where you are? It's always a joy to see how far across the world this little sleepy corner of science travels. Now take a slow, deep breath, let your shoulders soften, and together let us sink gently toward the strangest lives ever found in the deepest place on Earth. Far below the familiar layers of the ocean, the Mariana Trench exists as a place where ordinary expectations slowly lose their meaning. It is not marked by sudden danger or visible boundaries, but by a gradual accumulation of extremes that quietly reshape everything that enters its depth. Each meter downward adds weight, silence, and separation until the environment no longer resembles the surface world in function or rhythm. Depth here is not simply distance from the sunlit ocean above. It is a stacking of water so immense that its mass presses inward from all directions at once. Pressure builds steadily, invisibly, until it becomes the dominant force shaping every material and every living cell. At these depths, water does not feel fluid in the way we imagine. It behaves more like a constant, squeezing presence that leaves no empty space untouched. Any organism that survives must be built to exist within that pressure rather than resist it. The temperature adds another quiet constraint. Near the bottom of the trench, the water hovers just above freezing, not fluctuating with seasons or weather. Cold here is not dramatic or biting. It is steady and permanent, slowing chemical reactions, movement, and growth. Energy becomes precious, conserved through patience rather than speed. Life that thrives under these conditions learns to move less, waste nothing, and persist without urgency. Darkness completes the isolation. Sunlight fades completely long before the trench floor begins. Light simply cannot travel far enough through so much water, absorbed and scattered until nothing remains. Without light, photosynthesis is impossible, removing the foundation that supports most surface ecosystems. Color loses its usefulness. Vision becomes optional or disappears entirely. What remains is a world defined by texture, pressure, vibration, and chemistry rather than sight. Food arrives rarely and without pattern. The trench produces almost nothing of its own. Instead, nourishment drifts downward from distant places, fragments of organic material sinking slowly through miles of water. Most days bring nothing at all. Then, without warning, a brief abundance may arrive, lasting only moments before scarcity returns. Survival favors organisms that can endure long absences, store energy efficiently, and respond quickly when opportunity finally appears. The trench is also physically cut off from the wider ocean. Its steep walls and immense depth limit water circulation, movement, and migration. Populations become separated not by distance across the globe, but by vertical barriers that few organisms can cross. This isolation allows life to follow its own path, shaped by pressure and scarcity rather than competition or speed. Together, these conditions create a biological extreme unlike any shallow sea. Survival here does not reward strength or agility. It favors flexibility, restraint, and designs that would fail instantly elsewhere. In the Mariana Trench, life does not conquer its environment, it adjusts to it, quietly and completely. For much of modern ocean science, the deep sea was mapped not only by depth, but by belief. As instruments reached farther down the water column, an invisible line began to form in scientific thinking, a boundary where complexity was expected to give way to simplicity. Below a certain point, life might persist, but only in small, primitive forms. Fish with backbones, muscles, and delicate organs were thought to belong to the upper world. This expectation grew from reasonable assumptions. Pressure increases relentlessly with depth, and vertebrate bodies rely on structures that seem ill-suited to such force. Bones, gas-filled spaces, and finely balanced systems appeared fragile when imagined under crushing weight. As surveys pushed deeper, fish became fewer, smaller, and more specialized. Each expedition seemed to confirm the same quiet pattern. Life thinned, then stopped, long before reaching the deepest basins of the ocean. Over time, this pattern hardened into consensus. Textbooks, models, and mission plans reflected it. The abyss had limits, and vertebrates were believed to reach theirs, thousands of meters above the deepest trenches. What lay below was assumed to belong exclusively to invertebrates and microbes, organisms simpler in form and chemistry, better suited to endure conditions that punished complexity. Then the boundary failed without drama. During deep ocean expeditions, cameras and traps were lowered not to challenge that assumption, but to gather data on the environment itself. The goal was measurement, not discovery. Yet when instruments returned, they carried quiet evidence that did not fit the accepted picture. Fish, unmistakably vertebrate, appeared in footage and samples taken from depths once labeled unreachable. Their presence was not fleeting or ambiguous. It was repeatable, documented, and undeniable. These were not surface fish lost in a current or drifting downward by accident. They were living where they were found, moving deliberately, feeding and surviving in place. Their bodies told the story clearly. Reduced skeletal density, gelatinous tissues, and flexible forms revealed adaptation rather than intrusion. This was not life hanging on at the edge of tolerance. It was life settled comfortably beyond the line drawn by expectation. The realization did not overturn theory in a single moment, but it shifted the ground beneath it. If fish could exist there, then the assumed cutoff was not a rule, only a guess shaped by limited observation. The deep ocean had not reached an endpoint, it had simply crossed into territory rarely seen. From that point forward, depth ceased to be a reliable measure of possibility. Each confirmation below the old boundary expanded the known range of vertebrate life and softened the idea of absolute limits. The ocean floor no longer marked where life should stop, only where understanding had not yet caught up. What had once felt settled became provisional. The deep sea was no longer a place where biology faded away, but a place where it continued, quietly revising the rules that defined it. Long before their name entered public awareness, these fish were already present, unnoticed, moving slowly along trench slopes where depth presses constantly from every side. They were not announced by spectacle or sudden discovery, but by careful confirmation, appearing again and again in records taken from the deepest zones ever reached by cameras and traps. Today, they are known collectively as hadal snailfish, the deepest confirmed fish observed anywhere on Earth. At first glance, their bodies appear fragile, almost unfinished by surface standards. Skin is pale and often translucent, allowing the suggestion of internal organs beneath its surface. Muscles are soft, lacking the dense firmness seen in shallow water fish. Fins are thin and understated, shaped for balance rather than power. Nothing about their appearance suggests speed, strength, or aggression. Everything about it reflects accommodation. This softness is not a flaw. In the hadal environment, rigidity becomes a liability. Hard bones and stiff structures resist pressure unevenly, creating points of stress where collapse begins. Snailfish avoid this problem by reducing what can be crushed. Their skeletons contain less mineralization, making them more flexible and better matched to the constant weight of the surrounding water. Instead of opposing pressure, their bodies yield to it gently, maintaining internal balance rather than structural defiance. Within their cells, fluids are arranged to mirror the pressure outside. There are no large gas-filled spaces to compress, no hollow cavities waiting to fail. Movement is deliberate and economical, driven by muscles that function without demanding rapid bursts of energy. Each motion is shaped by the understanding that resistance is costly and unnecessary. Stability matters more than speed. This design allows hadal snailfish to occupy depths where more rigid fish would suffer damage simply by existing. Their bodies remain intact not because they are protected, but because they are compatible with their surroundings. Pressure becomes something to live within, not something to shield against. In this way, the trench does not feel hostile to them. It feels normal. They feed quietly on small invertebrates, an organic material that gathers along the trench floor, guided by chemical cues rather than sight. Without light, coloration offers no advantage, and vision fades into irrelevance. What remains is a body tuned to subtle changes in water movement and contact with the seafloor. Survival depends on presence rather than pursuit. The existence of hadal snailfish confirms something subtle but profound. Complex vertebrate life does not always persist by reinforcing familiar strengths. Sometimes it survives by abandoning them entirely. In the deepest places on Earth, success belongs to organisms willing to become softer, simpler, and more patient than anything above them. Not all limits announce themselves with violence. In the trench, boundaries are often revealed only when something leaves its proper place. Many animals that live under extreme pressure appear calm and functional in their native depth, yet the moment they are removed, the environment changes faster than their bodies can follow. Survival here is not only about enduring pressure, but about never escaping it. Trench animals are shaped by a constant force that presses evenly from every direction. Over time, their tissues, organs, and internal balance settle into this steady state. Nothing inside them expects relief. When pressure suddenly decreases, that balance is lost. Water expands within tissues, internal spaces shift. Structures that function quietly at depth begin to strain without warning. The change does not need to be dramatic to be fatal. It only needs to be rapid. For these animals, rising through the water column can be more dangerous than any predator. Even without visible wounds, their bodies begin to fail as the surrounding pressure loosens its hold. Organs may swell, delicate tissues lose support. Systems that rely on compression to function properly become unstable. Death can occur without tearing, bleeding, or impact, simply because the environment they are built for has vanished too quickly. This is why many trench species cannot survive in shallow water, even when carefully handled. The problem is not injury, temperature, or lack of oxygen. It is physics. Their bodies are tuned to a narrow range of conditions that exist only in the deep. Outside of that range, the same traits that allowed survival become liabilities. Flexibility turns into collapse. Reduced structure becomes instability. Adaptation reveals its cost. As a result, these creatures are rarely seen alive outside their home environment. Observations often rely on remote cameras, pressure-maintaining equipment, or brief glimpses before ascent changes everything. The absence of surface encounters is not a mystery of rarity. It is a reminder of specialization taken to its extreme. These are not travelers between worlds. They are residents of one. Over generations, natural selection has refined bodies that function flawlessly under a single set of rules. Every aspect of their design reflects permanence rather than versatility. There is no need to withstand fluctuating depths, changing seasons, or sudden movement. Stability dominates. Efficiency replaces strength. Resilience comes not from toughness, but from perfect alignment with pressure that never relents. In the trench, this alignment creates a quiet form of success. Life persists by narrowing its possibilities until only one remains. These animals do not tolerate their environment. They depend on it completely. Remove the pressure, and the design unravels. Leave it undisturbed, and life continues with little change. This is the hidden cost of extreme adaptation. Survival is achieved not by expanding limits, but by committing to them fully. In the deepest parts of the ocean, life endures only where it belongs, shaped so precisely that it cannot exist anywhere else. Above the trench, far beyond any visibility from below, the ocean carries on with its familiar rhythms. Sunlit waters grow, consume, and shed material constantly, yet almost none of that activity belongs to the world beneath. The Mariana Trench has no internal engine for production. There are no plants, no algae, no surfaces bathed in light where energy can be created anew. Everything that exists at the bottom must arrive from elsewhere, already spent and slowly transformed by distance. What feeds the trench begins its journey far overhead. Minute fragments of organic matter, discarded shells, dead plankton, and the remains of distant meals begin a long descent through the water column. The process is unhurried. Days stretch into weeks as particles drift downward, breaking apart as they fall. Many are consumed long before they ever reach the deep, intercepted by life suspended higher in the ocean. Only a small fraction continues past that gauntlet, thinning further with every meter. By the time material reaches trench depths, it has lost much of its original richness. What remains settles quietly onto the seafloor, scattered unevenly and without pattern. There is no steady rain of nourishment. Long intervals pass with no arrival at all. The environment does not pulse with regular supply. It waits. Occasionally, something larger falls. The body of a fish, the remains of a jelly, fragments carried by currents from distant coasts. These moments are rare, separated by long spans of absence. When they occur, they do not linger. Trench life responds efficiently, reducing the gift to usable energy with little waste. Soon after, scarcity returns, uninterrupted and familiar. This uneven arrival shapes every interaction. Growth is slow because excess energy is almost never available. Reproduction is measured, movement is restrained. Nothing encourages speed when there is nowhere to go and nothing to chase. Survival favors organisms that can endure long periods without feeding, storing what little arrives and stretching it across weeks or months. Hunger here is not a crisis, it is a condition. Because food is so limited, competition takes a quieter form. There is no constant struggle for territory rich with resources. Instead, the environment rewards awareness and timing. The ability to detect a rare arrival matters more than dominance. Patience becomes an ecological advantage, refined slowly through generations that learned the cost of urgency. The trench itself remains passive. It does not circulate nutrients or recycle waste quickly. Material accumulates, settles, and is consumed at a pace set by gravity rather than abundance. In this stillness, scarcity becomes the defining force, shaping bodies, behaviors, and entire life histories without spectacle. Nothing here is wasted because nothing arrives easily. Life persists by waiting, by accepting long, quiet stretches, and by making full use of moments that pass only briefly. In a world where food almost never arrives, endurance is not merely a trait, it is the foundation on which everything rests. In the stillness of the trench floor, movement often begins long before food arrives. The water carries faint chemical traces and subtle disturbances that spread outward through the dark, announcing change without sound. From the sediment and surrounding slopes, trench amphipods emerge, small at first glance, yet among the most active participants in this sparse ecosystem. They function as the primary scavengers of the hadal world, waiting not with idleness, but with readiness shaped by long absence. Trench amphipods resemble shrimp in outline, but their scale sets them apart. Many species grow far larger than their relatives in shallower waters, bodies thickened and elongated, limbs strong enough to hold position against gentle currents. This size is not the product of abundance. It is the result of selection acting slowly in an environment where meals are rare and competition is brief. A larger body allows greater energy storage, extending survival through long intervals without feeding. What looks like excess is, in truth, reserve. Their growth is unhurried. Without frequent food, rapid development offers no advantage. Instead, amphipods accumulate mass gradually, converting each scarce opportunity into stored fuel. The trench rewards this strategy. When nothing arrives for weeks or months, size becomes stability. Smaller bodies exhaust their reserves too quickly. Larger ones endure. Detection matters as much as endurance. Amphipods do not rely on sight. In complete darkness, vision offers little guidance. Instead, they sense chemical gradients released by decaying organic matter and the faint vibrations that follow falling debris. These signals travel farther than any visual cue, spreading through the water column long before the material reaches the seafloor. Amphipods respond by converging from surprising distances, drawn together by information carried invisibly through their environment. When food finally arrives, Speed briefly replaces stillness. Amphipods gather quickly, surrounding carcasses and fragments with sudden density. Feeding is efficient and direct. There is no prolonged struggle. Tissue is reduced to usable energy with little delay. Soon after, activity fades. The group disperses, returning to the quiet patience that defines most of their existence. This rhythm shapes their behavior more than any other force. Amphipods are not constant foragers. They are waiters. Their lives are structured around absence rather than presence. Muscles remain relaxed. Metabolism stays low. Energy is conserved as a default state, released only when circumstances demand it. The trench does not favor those who search endlessly. It favors those who can remain alert without moving. Patience, here, is not passive. It is an active biological strategy, refined through countless generations that learned the cost of haste. Amphipods persist because they expect nothing and respond fully when something appears. In a world defined by rare falls from above, waiting becomes a form of expertise, and endurance becomes a path to continuity. In the trench, life does not move according to steady supply. It follows a rhythm set by interruption. Long periods of quiet persistence are occasionally broken by moments when resources arrive all at once, brief events that reshape behavior without altering the stillness that surrounds them. This pattern of feast and famine is not dramatic, but it is decisive, leaving its imprint on every action and every pause. When food suddenly appears, behavior shifts immediately. Dormant systems awaken. Organisms that have remained still for weeks respond with precise urgency, converging on the source and feeding quickly. There is no ceremony in these moments. Eating becomes efficient and direct, focused on absorbing as much usable material as possible before the opportunity disappears. What matters is not how elegantly food is taken, but how completely it is converted into energy. Once the brief abundance fades, activity declines just as quickly. Movement slows, feeding stops, life returns to a low-energy state that can be sustained for long stretches without input. This alternation defines daily existence, not as a cycle of growth and rest, but as a strategy of survival tuned to unpredictability. The trench does not reward constant effort, it rewards readiness. Speed, in this environment, offers little advantage. Chasing food across distance wastes energy that may not be replaced for a very long time. Instead, evolution favors storage. Bodies become repositories, able to hold reserves gathered during rare feeding events and distribute them slowly across months of scarcity. Fatty tissues, chemical energy stores, and low metabolic demands allow organisms to stretch moments of plenty into long spans of continuation. This emphasis on storage reshapes form and behavior. Growth slows, reproduction becomes infrequent, development stretches across timescales unfamiliar to surface ecosystems. Nothing pushes life to hurry. Each generation inherits not only physical traits, but a pace calibrated to absence. The trench teaches patience through selection, removing those that spend too much, too quickly. Over time, this pattern sculpts evolution itself. Traits that favor endurance persist, while those optimized for rapid response or constant intake fade away. Muscles adapt for minimal motion. Internal processes settle into efficiency rather than output. Even sensory systems prioritize detection over pursuit, gathering information without requiring movement. The feast matters, but famine defines everything around it. This shaping occurs quietly, without sharp transitions or visible boundaries. Scarcity does not announce itself as crisis. It exists as a background condition, influencing choices long before they appear consequential. Over geological time, it becomes a guiding force, narrowing the range of viable designs until only those aligned with a regular supply remain. Life in the trench reflects this history. It is not driven by conquest or competition. It is shaped by intervals, by waiting, by the careful use of what arrives unexpectedly. In a world where abundance is fleeting and absence is normal, survival belongs to those who have learned to live between moments, carrying the memory of the last meal forward into the silence that follows. In the deepest parts of the ocean, shape becomes quieter. Forms that seem incomplete by surface standards persist without urgency, moving through darkness with no need to announce themselves. Here, life trends toward reduction, not as loss, but as refinement. What remains is only what serves a purpose under constant pressure and permanent night. Many trench organisms display eyes that are diminished or absent, reduced to simple light-sensing tissue or sealed beneath skin. In a place where sunlight never arrives, vision offers no meaningful guidance. Color follows the same path. Pigment fades, sometimes disappearing entirely, leaving bodies pale or translucent. Without light, camouflage has no audience, and display carries no message. Energy spent producing color is better used elsewhere. Structure simplifies as well. Limbs shorten or vanish, armor thins. Elaborate features common in shallow seas give way to smoother outlines and softer tissues. These bodies do not advertise strength or complexity. They reflect careful subtraction. Every component must justify its presence through function alone. Anything unnecessary becomes a burden when energy is scarce and pressure never lifts. This reduction does not signal fragility. On the contrary, it represents stability. By eliminating structures that offer no advantage, trench organisms reduce maintenance costs. Fewer parts mean fewer points of failure. In an environment that remains constant over long spans of time, versatility matters less than reliability. The trench favors designs that can persist without adjustment. Biological minimalism emerges naturally from these conditions. Metabolism slows. Sensory systems narrow their focus to what can be detected without light. Chemical traces, vibrations, contact with sediment. Behavior becomes deliberate rather than reactive. These organisms do not respond to a changing world. They inhabit one that barely changes at all. Function outweighs appearance completely. What something looks like has no consequence here. Survival depends on how efficiently energy is used, how well tissues remain stable under pressure, how little is required to keep systems operating. Bodies become tools rather than displays, shaped only by what works. Over long periods, this process leaves behind organisms that seem unfamiliar, even unfinished, to eyes accustomed to surface life. Yet nothing about them is accidental. Each reduction reflects a history of selection that removed excess piece by piece. Eyes faded because they offered no information. Color vanished because it carried no signal. Complex forms simplified because they consumed energy without returning value. These designs succeed because the trench does not reward excess. It does not encourage ornament, speed, or versatility. It rewards endurance. The organisms that thrive here are those that ask very little of their environment and demand even less from themselves. In this way, the deepest ocean becomes a gallery of refined survival, not stripped down by hardship, but shaped by precision. Life continues, not through accumulation, but through careful restraint, proving that complexity is not always an advantage when the world grows quiet and still. On the trench floor, among sediments that shift only when disturbed, life sometimes takes a form that defies easy scale. Shapes appear that resemble stones or fragments of shell, resting quietly where almost nothing else moves. They do not hunt, wander, or react with speed. Yet they are alive, and more surprisingly, each one exists as a single cell. These organisms are xenophyophores, among the largest single-celled life forms known. Though they can grow to the size of pebbles or larger, they are not made of multiple cooperating cells. Instead, their vast size is achieved by expanding one continuous cellular structure, stretched thin but stable within the deep ocean's steady pressure. Their internal architecture relies on networks of membranes and strands that support cellular function without dividing into separate units. Complexity is managed internally rather than through specialization. This unusual size is made possible by the calm consistency of the trench. Without waves, temperature swings, or mechanical disturbance, there is no need for compact strength. The surrounding pressure supports delicate structures evenly, allowing xenophyophores to spread outward instead of thickening inward. Growth becomes a slow extension rather than a buildup of mass. In this way, they avoid the limitations that typically constrain single cells to microscopic dimensions. Xenophyophores remain anchored to the sea floor, drawing sustenance directly from their surroundings. Fine sediment carries particles of organic material, bacteria, and decaying matter that settles slowly from above. The surface of a xenophyophore is structured to trap these particles efficiently. Sticky secretions and intricate folds capture passing nutrients, holding them in place long enough to be absorbed. Feeding occurs continuously but quietly, without movement or pursuit. Because food arrives unpredictably in the trench, this passive strategy proves effective. Xenophyophores do not depend on sudden abundance. They accumulate nutrition gradually, gathering what passes by rather than waiting for rare large events. Their slow metabolism allows them to process scarce resources without urgency. Time, rather than speed, becomes their ally. These organisms thrive where competition is limited and disturbance is rare. Their size discourages smaller scavengers, while their chemistry allows them to tolerate pressure and low oxygen conditions that would strain more active life forms. Reproduction is slow, but persistence compensates. Once established, xenophyophores can remain in place for long periods, quietly integrating into the sedimentary landscape. Their presence challenges familiar expectations about complexity. Size here does not require many parts, only conditions that allow expansion without disruption. In the trench, being large does not mean being powerful. It means being stable. Xenophyophores succeed by occupying space gently, filtering nourishment from stillness, and existing without hurry. Among the strangest inhabitants of the deep, they offer a quiet reminder that life does not always grow by multiplying itself. Sometimes, it grows by stretching patiently into the world it already occupies, finding opportunity and calm where nothing else competes. Inside every living cell, chemistry depends on shape. Proteins fold into precise forms, held together by delicate bonds that allow them to move, react, and release energy in controlled ways. In surface environments, these shapes remain stable because pressure stays within a narrow range. In the trench, that balance is disturbed. The immense weight of overlying water presses inward, forcing molecules closer together and altering the forces that keep proteins properly arranged. Under extreme pressure, proteins that function normally near the surface can begin to lose their structure. Bonds that once held a fold in place weaken or shift. Active sites deform. Reactions slow or fail entirely. For most life, this would lead to collapse at the cellular level long before any visible damage appeared. The challenge of the trench is not simply surviving as a body, but maintaining order inside each microscopic space where chemistry unfolds. Trench animals solve this problem through subtle adjustments rather than brute resistance. Their cells contain pressure-stabilizing compounds, small molecules that act as internal supports. These substances do not block pressure. Instead, they counter its effects by reinforcing the natural folding of proteins, helping them retain their functional shapes even when compressed. In simple terms, they keep cellular machinery aligned under conditions that would otherwise twist it out of usefulness. One of the most important of these compounds accumulates naturally within deep-sea organisms, becoming more concentrated with increasing depth. It works quietly, surrounding proteins and balancing the forces applied by pressure. With its presence, reactions proceed smoothly, membranes remain intact, and enzymes continue their work at a measured pace. Without it, the same systems would drift into instability. Cell membranes receive similar protection. Pressure tends to stiffen membranes, reducing their flexibility and disrupting transport. Trench organisms adjust the composition of their membranes, incorporating fats that remain fluid even when compressed. This allows nutrients to pass, waste to exit, and signals to move across boundaries without interruption. The cell remains responsive rather than locked in place. Together, these chemical strategies allow life to function as though the environment were less extreme than it truly is. The trench does not feel gentle. It is simply made manageable at the smallest scales. While surface life relies on stability provided by external conditions, trench life builds that stability internally, molecule by molecule. This chemistry differs fundamentally from what supports life in shallow water. Near the surface, organisms rarely need to defend against pressure at all. Their cells are optimized for temperature changes, light cycles, and variable oxygen. In the trench, none of those pressures dominate. Instead, constant compression shapes every reaction. The solutions that emerge are precise, specialized, and largely unnecessary elsewhere. These adaptations highlight how deeply environment influences biology. Survival here is not achieved through tougher bodies or stronger shells, but through chemistry tuned to forces invisible to the eye. Life continues because its smallest components have learned to hold their shape in a world that never loosens its grip. Time moves differently at extreme depth, not because clocks slow, but because life does. In the trench, behavior unfolds at a pace shaped by scarcity and permanence rather than urgency. The absence of light, regular food, and external disturbance creates an environment where haste offers no reward. What emerges instead is a way of living tuned to longevity and restraint. Metabolic rates here are remarkably low. Energy enters these bodies infrequently, so it is spent carefully. Internal processes run quietly, consuming only what is necessary to maintain balance and basic function. Growth proceeds slowly. Repair happens without rush. Nothing encourages acceleration when replacement resources may not arrive for weeks or months. This slow metabolism is not imposed by weakness. It is selected, reinforced across generations that survived by conserving rather than expending. Movement follows the same philosophy. Trench animals do not roam in search of opportunity. They position themselves and remain there, adjusting only when conditions change or food appears. Motions are measured and deliberate. often limited to subtle shifts along the sediment or gentle adjustments in posture. Muscles are capable, but rarely engaged at full effort. Stillness dominates because it costs less than motion. Speed, in this environment, is inefficient. Rapid movement burns energy that cannot be easily replaced. Chasing prey is unnecessary when food does not flee and competition is minimal. Even escape responses are reduced. With few predators and little reason to relocate, quick reactions offer limited benefit. Evolution favors those that avoid unnecessary action altogether. This deliberate pace shapes daily existence. Long spans pass with minimal activity, punctuated by brief moments of purposeful motion. When feeding occurs, effort is focused and contained. Once complete, the body returns to rest. The trench does not support constant engagement. It supports maintenance. From the surface perspective, this slowness can appear passive. In truth, it represents fine control. These organisms regulate their energy use with precision, aligning every action with necessity. There is no wasted sprint, no idle wandering. Each movement serves a function tied directly to survival. Over time, this behavioral pattern becomes deeply ingrained. Offspring inherit not only physical traits, but a tempo calibrated to absence. Life here does not react to a changing world. It persists within a stable one, adjusting slowly and rarely. The result is an ecosystem defined by calm continuity. Nothing rushes because nothing must. Survival does not depend on speed, strength, or dominance, but on the ability to last. In the trench, life succeeds by extending itself across time rather than compressing action into moments. This slower pace is not a limitation imposed by depth. It is an adaptation refined by it. Beneath miles of water, where pressure never lifts and food arrives without warning, moving slowly becomes a form of intelligence. Existence stretches outward, steady and controlled, proving that endurance often wears the shape of stillness. At the very base of the trench ecosystem, beneath scavengers, fish, and slow-moving forms, life persists at a scale too small to notice directly. It does not announce itself through motion or shape. It spreads quietly through sediment, water, and decaying material, forming the foundation upon which everything else depends. These are the microbes of the trench, present everywhere, shaping the deep without being seen. Microbes succeed here precisely because they are simple. Without complex organs, rigid skeletons, or specialized tissues, they avoid many of the failures pressure imposes on larger life. Their small size allows internal and external pressure to remain balanced, leaving little force to tear structures apart. Each cell exists as a compact system, stable because there is almost nothing inside it that can collapse. Their internal chemistry operates efficiently under compression. Reactions occur slowly but reliably, supported by enzymes suited to the trench's conditions. These cells do not require rapid response or high energy output. They persist through steady chemical exchange, maintaining order at a pace aligned with their environment. Pressure becomes a background presence rather than an obstacle. Microbes play a central role in recycling what little arrives from above. Organic material that reaches the trench floor does not remain intact for long. Microbial communities colonize it almost immediately, breaking complex compounds into simpler forms. Through this process, nutrients are released back into the environment, becoming available to larger organisms that cannot process raw material on their own. Without this transformation, much of the trench would remain biologically inaccessible. This recycling occurs continuously, even during long periods of scarcity. Microbes extract value from fragments too small or too degraded for other life to use. In doing so, they prevent waste from accumulating and sustain the limited flow of energy through the system. Every movement higher up the food web traces back to this quiet work. Some microbes draw energy not from falling organic matter, but from chemical interactions within the sediment itself. They exploit subtle gradients created by pressure, minerals, and slow decomposition. These processes generate just enough energy to sustain cellular life, independent of sunlight or surface-driven cycles. The trench does not glow with these reactions. They unfold silently, molecule by molecule. Despite their importance, microbes leave no visible mark. They do not change the landscape or create structures that catch the eye. Their influence is measured in continuity rather than transformation. They keep the ecosystem functioning during long intervals when nothing else appears to be happening. In this way, microbes form the quiet backbone of trench life. They exist everywhere, yet demand little. They connect death to renewal, scarcity to persistence, without drawing attention to themselves. While larger creatures wait, feed, and endure, microbes maintain the slow circulation of matter that makes survival possible at all. At the bottom of everything, life continues not because it is dramatic or complex, but because it is small, patient, and always present. In the trench, connection unfolds without sight or proximity. Bodies exist far apart, separated by darkness so complete that distance becomes meaningless. Yet reproduction continues, not through chance encounters or visual display, but through subtle exchanges carried quietly through the water itself. Life here finds continuity without ever needing to be seen. Trench animals rely on chemical signaling to locate one another. Specialized molecules are released into the surrounding water, drifting outward as faint traces that spread slowly through still currents. These signals persist for long periods, unaffected by darkness or depth. They do not announce presence loudly. Instead, they provide steady information, indicating readiness, identity, and timing to those able to interpret them. Sensitivity replaces vision. Receptors tuned to these chemical cues allow animals to detect one another across distances that would be impossible in illuminated environments. Movement toward a partner is not rushed. It follows gradients, guided patiently by concentration rather than direction. The process unfolds gradually, with no requirement for accuracy beyond persistence. Because encounters are rare and energy is limited, reproduction occurs infrequently. Trench organisms do not produce offspring continuously. Many wait long spans between reproductive events, aligning them with moments when sufficient energy has been stored. Producing gametes, locating a mate, and sustaining development all require resources that cannot be wasted. Each attempt is measured. Some species synchronize reproduction loosely across populations, guided by environmental cues that remain stable over time. Others depend on prolonged signaling, allowing individuals to remain receptive for extended periods until contact finally occurs. There is little urgency. The trench does not penalize delay. It rewards success when conditions align. Offspring development is equally restrained. Growth proceeds slowly, mirroring the pace of the environment into which new life emerges. Juveniles enter a world where food is scarce and change is minimal. Survival depends less on rapid expansion and more on steady integration into existing rhythms. Few offspring are produced, but those that persist are well suited to endure. This strategy results in slow population growth. Numbers increase gradually, sometimes remaining stable for long periods without noticeable change. The trench does not support booms. It maintains balance through limitation. Every new individual represents a careful investment rather than an experiment repeated often. Over time, this intimacy of reproduction shapes genetic continuity. Populations remain small and isolated, preserving traits refined for their specific depth and conditions. Variation accumulates slowly, guided by endurance rather than abundance. The absence of light and crowding removes pressures that drive rapid diversification elsewhere. Reproduction in the trench reflects the same principles that govern all life here. Efficiency matters more than output. Precision outweighs display. Connection does not rely on being close or visible, only on persistence across time and distance. In this environment, life continues quietly, generation by generation, carried forward through signals that drift unseen through the dark. Continuity does not require frequent renewal. It requires only enough connection to ensure that the slow rhythm of existence never fully stops. Longevity in the trench begins quietly, without ceremony, shaped by a world where urgency never takes hold. Days do not bring sharp changes, and nights do not arrive or leave. Within this steady backdrop, some organisms persist far longer than their relatives above, not because they are protected or powerful, but because nothing pushes them to hurry. Low energy use plays a central role. Trench creatures burn fuel slowly, drawing on reserves with careful control. Metabolic processes operate at reduced intensity, limiting wear on cells and tissues. Growth is measured. Repair unfolds at a patient pace. Without frequent feeding or rapid movement, the body avoids the stresses that shorten life in more active environments. Energy, once acquired, is stretched across time rather than spent quickly. This economy of effort is supported by remarkable environmental stability. Temperature near the trench floor remains nearly constant, shifting little from day to day or season to season. There are no storms, no surface-driven currents to impose sudden strain. Light never intrudes, and darkness never deepens. Each moment resembles the last, allowing physiological systems to settle into predictable patterns. When conditions remain unchanged, there is little need for constant adjustment. Such stability reduces cumulative damage. Cells are not forced to respond repeatedly to extremes. Proteins maintain their structure without cycling through stress and recovery. Tissues experience minimal mechanical disruption. Over long spans, this consistency preserves function, extending viable lifespan without requiring exceptional repair mechanisms. Predation pressure is also reduced. The trench supports relatively few active hunters, and encounters between predators and prey are infrequent. Many organisms grow slowly, not because they must evade pursuit, but because there is little incentive to do otherwise. With fewer threats demanding constant vigilance or escape, bodies avoid the cost of rapid reaction. Injuries are rare. Survival depends more on persistence than on evasion. This calm reshapes life history. Reproduction occurs sparingly, and individuals often survive long enough to reproduce multiple times across extended periods. Longevity compensates for low reproductive output, maintaining population stability without requiring short lifespans. In this context, living longer is not a luxury. It is a necessity built into the system. Over generations, traits that favor endurance accumulate. Slower cellular turnover reduces mutation rates linked to frequent division. Stable environments limit exposure to harmful fluctuations. Reduced activity lowers the chance of fatal error. Together, these influences align life toward continuity rather than speed. The result is an ecosystem where age carries little disadvantage. Time does not erode survival as quickly as it does in dynamic environments. Life unfolds across decades rather than seasons, anchored by conditions that rarely change. Longevity here is not a defiance of hardship, it is a reflection of quiet. In the deepest parts of the ocean, where calm replaces chaos and consistency replaces pressure to act, life extends itself gently across time, enduring not by force, but by remaining in balance with a world that asks very little of it. Isolation in the trench does not come from distance across the planet, but from distance downward. Vertical separation replaces horizontal travel, creating populations cut off not by continents, but by pressure and depth. Life that settles here becomes enclosed by conditions so specific that movement beyond them is rarely possible, and over time, this separation reshapes evolution itself. Trench populations are genetically distinct because leaving is as difficult as arriving. Organisms adapted to extreme pressure cannot move freely into shallower water without physiological collapse. At the same time, surface species cannot descend without failing long before reaching the bottom. This creates a one-way boundary that few can cross in either direction. Once life establishes itself at depth, it remains there, generation after generation. Gene flow becomes limited almost immediately. Encounters between distant trench populations are rare, even within the same trench system. Steep walls, uneven terrain, and vast stretches of inhospitable depth prevent easy movement along the seafloor. Individuals reproduce locally, passing traits within a closed circle rather than mixing widely. Over time, this isolation becomes embedded in the genetic structure of the population. This process mirrors what happens on remote islands at the surface. Islands restrict movement, limiting interaction with mainland populations. In the trench, water replaces air and pressure replaces distance, but the outcome is similar. Populations diverge quietly, adapting to subtle differences in depth, sediment, and resource availability. Each trench becomes its own evolutionary setting, shaped by the same general forces, but following a unique path. Without regular gene exchange, small differences accumulate. A slight change in metabolism, reproduction timing, or chemistry may persist rather than being diluted. Over long spans, these differences grow more pronounced. Bodies shift, behaviors align more closely with local conditions. What began as variation becomes identity. Because environmental conditions in the trench remain stable, this divergence unfolds slowly. There are no rapid cycles forcing constant readjustment. Selection acts gently but persistently, favoring traits that match a specific depth and setting. The absence of disruption allows these traits to remain, building layer upon layer of specialization. This isolation does not fragment life randomly. It creates coherence. Each population becomes finely tuned to its particular corner of the deep. The trench does not encourage expansion or dominance. It encourages precision. Survival belongs to those who fit exactly where they are. Over geological time, this leads to lineages that appear ancient and distinct, even when their origins trace back to more widespread ancestors. Isolation preserves form and function, protecting them from the pressures that drive rapid change elsewhere. Evolution in the trench is not driven by competition between many players. It is guided by separation, patience, and consistency. Each population drifts along its own trajectory, shaped more by where it cannot go than where it can. In this way, the deepest parts of the ocean quietly produce diversity, not through chaos, but through long solitude and careful change. Soundless information fills the trench, carried not by light but by movement. Even in complete darkness, the water is never perfectly still. Tiny disturbances ripple outward, created by shifting sediment, passing bodies, or distant changes along the seafloor. Life here learns to read these signals with precision, building awareness without ever seeing its surroundings. Many trench animals rely on vibration-based sensing to interpret their environment. Specialized cells along the body detect subtle changes in water movement, translating pressure waves into spatial information. These vibrations travel efficiently through dense water, reaching far beyond the range of any visual cue. A falling fragment, a moving organism, or the slow approach of a current leaves a signature that can be recognized and interpreted long before contact occurs. Pressure itself becomes a source of awareness. At extreme depth, even minor changes in water displacement are felt immediately. Bodies are constantly informed of what happens nearby through shifts in compression and flow. This sensitivity allows trench organisms to remain aware of their surroundings while remaining still. Movement is detected without movement in response. Chemical cues often accompany these vibrations, reinforcing information carried through the water. Together, they create a layered sensory world built on presence rather than appearance. Orientation does not depend on landmarks or silhouettes. It depends on gradients, pressure patterns, and timing. The environment reveals itself as a map of motion rather than form. In this context, eyes offer little advantage. Without light, vision cannot provide meaningful detail or early warning. Maintaining eyes requires energy, development, and protection, none of which return value in permanent darkness. Over time, eyes shrink, lose function, or disappear entirely. Sensory resources shift toward systems that operate continuously, regardless of illumination. This loss does not diminish awareness, it refines it. Trench organisms do not experience blindness. They experience perception shaped differently from surface life. Their awareness surrounds them evenly, not focused forward. Information arrives as changes in the medium they inhabit, rather than images projected at a distance. The world is sensed rather than observed. Silent perception dominates behavior. Reactions are rarely sudden. Responses unfold gradually, matching the slow pace of environmental change. There is little need for rapid recognition when nothing approaches quickly. Sensory systems emphasize accuracy over speed, allowing organisms to discern meaningful signals from constant background noise. This form of perception also supports energy conservation. Remaining still while sensing reduces expenditure without sacrificing awareness. Life here does not need to search actively for information. Information comes to it through the water itself. Every vibration carries context. Every shift in pressure carries meaning. Over time, these systems become highly specialized, tuned to the frequencies and movements most relevant to survival. Unnecessary sensitivity fades, replaced by focused detection of changes that matter. The trench rewards this restraint. Precision matters more than range. In a world without light, perception adapts by listening rather than looking. Awareness persists without vision, guided by motion, pressure, and quiet signals that drift endlessly through the dark. Life continues, fully informed, without ever needing to see. At extreme depth, sound becomes the dominant messenger. Where light is absent and movement is minimal, vibration carries information farther than any other signal. The dense water of the trench transmits sound efficiently, allowing it to travel long distances with little loss. In this environment, the ocean itself becomes a medium for quiet communication and distant events. Sound moves through water faster than it does through air, and increasing pressure makes that movement more consistent. At trench depths, water molecules are packed closely together, passing vibrations along smoothly. Low-frequency sounds, in particular, can travel great distances, bending with layers of temperature and pressure rather than dissipating quickly. A distant disturbance can be felt far from its origin, arriving as a subtle tremor rather than a sharp noise. Recordings from the Mariana Trench reveal a soundscape that is sparse but persistent. Hydrophones lowered to the seafloor have captured low rumbles, distant echoes, and faint pulses that repeat without clear pattern. Some sounds can be traced to natural sources, such as shifting tectonic plates, undersea landslides, or the slow movement of sediment along steep slopes. Others originate far above, carried downward from storms or waves interacting with the surface hundreds of miles away. Biological sounds also appear in these recordings, though they are infrequent and subdued. Occasional clicking or rhythmic pulses suggest the presence of living organisms producing sound intentionally or incidentally through movement. These signals are rare, not because life is absent, but because energy conservation discourages constant activity. Sound here is not a continuous chorus. It is an interruption. Much is understood about how sound behaves under these conditions. The physics of pressure, density, and temperature provide reliable explanations for how vibrations move and persist. Researchers can model how low-frequency sound bends and travels through layered water columns, predicting where it will appear and how long it will last. Instruments confirm these patterns consistently, yet interpretation remains limited. While many recorded sounds can be categorized by frequency and rhythm, their exact origins are not always clear. Some signals resist easy classification, remaining unexplained not through mystery, but through insufficient data. The trench is vast, and recordings represent brief moments within a largely unmonitored environment. Silence between sounds often reveals as much as the sounds themselves. Importantly, there is no constant noise filling the deep. The trench is not loud, it is spacious. Sound arrives intermittently, separated by long periods of quiet. This absence is part of the environment's character, reinforcing the slow pace of life and the rarity of disturbance. For organisms living here, sound provides awareness rather than communication in the familiar sense. Vibrations indicate change, proximity, or motion, but do not carry complex messages. They inform rather than converse. Life responds to these cues with restraint, adjusting position or behavior without haste. In the deepest ocean, sound exists as a physical consequence of movement and pressure, not as a language or warning system. It connects distant places briefly, then fades, leaving calm behind. What is known reflects careful measurement. What remains unknown reflects how little has been recorded. Together, they describe an environment where even sound respects the quiet. Reaching the trench is never routine. Each descent requires moving through miles of water that apply constant pressure, leaving no margin for error. Equipment must survive forces that would crush ordinary vessels long before reaching the seafloor. Every cable, seal, and joint must function perfectly, not briefly, but continuously, in conditions that cannot be tested fully At the surface, preparation extends over years because failure at depth cannot be repaired once the descent begins. The technical challenges are immense. Submersibles and landers must be built from specialized materials that balance strength with flexibility, able to endure compression without becoming brittle. Electronics require shielding to function under pressure that distorts signals and damages components. Communication becomes limited, forcing missions to rely on delayed data retrieval rather than live control. Even small design miscalculations can end an expedition before it truly starts. These demands make trench exploration expensive. Construction, testing, transport, and deployment require significant resources. Vessels capable of supporting deep missions are few, and operating them involves large crews and long stretches at sea. Launch windows depend on weather, ocean conditions, and availability, adding further uncertainty. As a result, funding must be substantial and sustained, limiting how often missions can be approved. Because of these constraints, trips to the trench are rare. Years, sometimes decades, may pass between major expeditions. During that time, technology advances, but data does not accumulate evenly. The deep remains undersampled, not through neglect, but through necessity. The effort required to reach it keeps exploration slow. This scarcity gives each mission outsized importance. Instruments lowered to the trench do not simply collect samples. They capture brief moments in an environment otherwise untouched by direct observation. Every recording, measurement, and specimen becomes part of a small and valuable archive. When data returns to the surface, it often answers one question while raising several others, expanding understanding in unexpected directions. Even negative results matter. Knowing where life was not found or where conditions differed from expectation refines future exploration. In such a difficult environment, absence carries information. Each dataset narrows uncertainty, guiding later missions toward more precise goals. The value of trench data also extends beyond biology. Measurements of pressure, chemistry, and geology inform broader understanding of Earth systems. They contribute to models of tectonic movement, ocean circulation, and extreme material behavior. Because direct access is limited, these observations cannot be easily replaced or repeated. Every mission represents a temporary opening into a world that normally remains sealed. When instruments touch the bottom, they do so briefly, gathering what they can before returning upward. The trench resumes its quiet immediately after, unchanged by attention. In this context, exploration becomes an act of careful listening rather than conquest. Each descent adds a few clear notes to a long silence. Progress comes slowly, not through frequent visits, but through patience and respect for an environment that allows itself to be studied only on rare occasions. Some of the strangest encounters in the trench exist only as brief records, moments captured once and never repeated. A shape passes through a camera frame, unfamiliar and unclassified. A specimen appears in a trap, damaged or incomplete, offering just enough detail to confirm it is something new. Then it disappears, leaving behind images, measurements, and questions that remain unresolved not through mystery, but through distance and rarity. These organisms are not legends or rumors. They are documented carefully, recorded by instruments designed to observe without bias, yet their appearances are fleeting. The trench is vast, uneven, and sparsely populated. Observations represent only narrow slices of space and time. When an organism is seen once, it does not imply uniqueness. It reflects how little of this environment has been directly observed. Returning to the same location rarely guarantees a second encounter. Trench missions are limited in number and duration. Each descent covers only a small area, guided by technical constraints rather than biological targets. Currents shift slowly. Sediment moves. Life relocates or remains hidden beneath the surface. The conditions that produced a single sighting may not align again for years, if ever. Follow-up is further complicated by fragility. Many trench organisms cannot survive ascent, leaving scientists unable to examine them in controlled settings. Others are observed only at a distance, making detailed analysis impossible. What remains are partial outlines, brief movement patterns, or traces preserved in footage. These fragments must stand in for complete understanding. As a result, knowledge remains incomplete by necessity. Classification is cautious. Descriptions focus on what is visible rather than what might be inferred. Without repeated observation, behaviors, lifespans, and ecological roles remain uncertain. Absence of data does not indicate absence of structure or importance. It marks the boundary of observation. This incompleteness shapes trench science itself. Researchers resist filling gaps with speculation, recognizing that imagination can outpace evidence in environments so rarely visited. Instead, unanswered observations are archived carefully, awaiting context provided by future missions or advances in technology. Patience becomes part of the method. These single sightings also highlight how little of the trench has been explored. The seafloor extends across thousands of kilometers, while human presence touches only scattered points. Each unexplained observation suggests not anomaly, but expectation. In a world so large and quiet, repetition is not guaranteed. Importantly, these creatures are not defined by their absence from later records. They continue to exist regardless of whether they are seen again. Observation does not sustain them, nor does disappearance imply extinction. The trench continues unchanged, supporting life beyond the reach of attention. In this way, single sightings serve as reminders rather than revelations. They mark the limits of current understanding without demanding resolution. The deep does not reveal itself fully, and it does not hurry to clarify what it offers briefly. Some forms pass through human awareness only once, leaving no trail beyond a moment of confirmation. Their stories remain unfinished, not because they are unknowable, but because the environment they inhabit allows itself to be seen only in fragments. Even in the most remote reaches of the ocean, traces of human presence have begun to appear. At depths once thought untouched, fragments of plastic have been found resting quietly on the trench floor, tangled in sediment or lodged against rock. These materials did not arrive through sudden intrusion. They arrived slowly, carried downward over years by the same gravity that delivers organic matter from above. Plastic behaves differently in the deep. As it descends, it breaks into smaller pieces rather than disappearing. Lightweight fragments drift longer, traveling vast distances before settling. When they finally reach the bottom, they persist. There is no sunlight to break them down further, and little physical disturbance to move them along. They become part of the environment, not through use or function, but through endurance. Alongside visible debris, chemical contamination has also reached the trench. Industrial compounds, heavy metals, and synthetic chemicals released at the surface bind to particles and sink gradually through the water column. These substances concentrate over time, accumulating in sediment where they can be absorbed by microbial communities and passed upward through the sparse food web. The process is slow and diffuse, but its presence is measurable. This contamination does not arrive in waves, it arrives as background. Each particle represents an action taken far away, disconnected in place but not in consequence. Rivers, coastlines, and surface currents serve as pathways linking daily human activity to environments beyond reach. The trench does not filter these inputs away, it collects them. What makes this presence especially striking is the contrast. The trench is defined by isolation, scarcity, and long intervals of stillness. Human pollution enters without regard for these conditions. It follows physical laws, not biological boundaries. In doing so, it reveals how thoroughly connected the planet's systems are, even where life itself remains sparse. The impact on trench ecosystems is not fully understood. Concentrations are low compared to surface environments, and the pace of change is slow. Yet the very fact that these materials are present alters assumptions about separation. No part of the ocean exists in complete independence from the rest. What moves through air and water eventually settles somewhere, and the deepest places are not exempt. This realization carries weight without requiring alarm. It reframes the trench, not as a sealed world, but as the far end of a continuous system. The same currents that support surface life also carry its byproducts downward. Time stretches their arrival, but does not prevent it. Trench organisms continue to persist, largely unaffected in the immediate sense. Life remains quiet, patient, and adapted to its conditions. Yet the presence of foreign materials introduces an element of change into an environment defined by stability. The effects may unfold slowly, measured in decades rather than seasons. When human pollution reaches the bottom, it does not announce itself dramatically. It settles in silence, joining sediment that has accumulated for millennia. Its significance lies not in visible disruption, but in what it reveals. The deepest place on Earth is not separate from human influence. It is connected, linked through shared physics, shared water, and shared time. Trench life matters to science not because it is exotic, but because it occupies the far edges of what biology can tolerate. Organisms living at extreme depth operate under pressures, temperatures, and energy limits that push fundamental systems toward their boundaries. By observing how life functions there, scientists gain clearer understanding of where those boundaries truly lie. Research in the trench reveals that biological limits are often more flexible than once assumed. Processes thought to fail under intense pressure continue with small but meaningful adjustments. Proteins fold differently. Cell membranes remain stable through altered chemistry. Metabolism slows without breaking. These observations refine assumptions about what life requires, replacing rigid thresholds with ranges shaped by adaptation. Such insights extend beyond marine biology. Pressure-tolerant enzymes and stabilizing compounds discovered in deep organisms inform biochemical research more broadly. Understanding how proteins retain function under compression helps scientists explore ways to preserve biological materials, stabilize pharmaceuticals, and design enzymes that remain active under challenging conditions. These lessons emerge not from dramatic breakthroughs, but from careful comparison between surface life and its deep, adapted counterparts. Medical relevance also appears quietly. The ways trench organisms protect cellular structures under constant stress offer models for studying protein, misfolding, cellular damage, and long-term stability. While the conditions differ from those inside the human body, the underlying principles of molecular resilience provide useful reference points. They show how chemistry can be tuned to reduce breakdown rather than accelerate performance. Trench research also sharpens scientific humility. Many assumptions about biology were formed through observation of accessible environments. The deep reveals how incomplete that perspective can be. Each descent demonstrates that life solves problems using strategies that surface ecosystems never needed to develop. This broadens scientific thinking, encouraging models that account for diversity of conditions rather than relying on familiar norms. Beyond biology, trench studies contribute to understanding Earth as an integrated system. Chemical cycles observed at depth inform models of nutrient flow across the entire ocean. Geological measurements refine knowledge of tectonic processes and long-term planetary stability. Physical data gathered under extreme conditions improve materials, science, and engineering, particularly in understanding how substances behave under constant stress. Importantly, the value of trench research lies in precision rather than spectacle. Discoveries do not overturn science overnight. They adjust it. Each dataset adds resolution to a larger picture, filling gaps left by environments easier to observe. Progress accumulates through careful measurement, repetition, and restraint. The trench also serves as a reminder that much of Earth remains undersampled. Scientific understanding advances not only by looking outward, but by looking deeper. The most challenging environments often provide the clearest tests of theory, revealing which principles hold universally and which depend on context. Trench life matters because it expands the framework within which science operates. It shows that biology is not confined to familiar conditions, and that understanding life requires attention to its quiet extremes. Without exaggeration or urgency, these environments offer something essential. They refine knowledge by demonstrating how life continues when nearly every advantage is removed. Across Earth, life occupies environments that appear inhospitable at first glance. Ice caps, deep rock, and isolated deserts each impose their own limits, shaping organisms through cold, darkness, or chemical scarcity. Yet the trench stands apart, not because it is harsher in a single way, but because it combines extremes into a single, unbroken setting that leaves no refuge within it. Polar ice presents one such comparison. Beneath frozen surfaces, life endures long darkness and low temperatures, relying on seasonal pulses of energy and slow metabolic rhythms. Even there, change arrives. Ice melts and refreezes. Sunlight returns. Nutrients circulate with shifting currents. Though harsh, polar systems remain connected to surface cycles, offering periods of renewal that allow recovery and adjustment. Deep rock ecosystems offer a different model. Life persists within fractures far below the surface, fed by chemical energy released through mineral reactions. These environments are stable and isolated, shielded from weather and light, yet they lack the immense pressure of the deep ocean. Space itself is limited, confining organisms to microscopic scales and narrow pathways. Interaction occurs slowly, but movement is constrained by solid boundaries rather than water. The trench unites elements of both while surpassing them in scale. Like polar regions, it is cold and dark. Like deep rock, it is isolated and chemically driven. Yet unlike either, it exists beneath miles of water that apply constant pressure across an open, fluid environment. There are no seasonal cycles, no melting phases, no solid walls to buffer force. Pressure and darkness are continuous, stretching across vast horizontal distances. This scale matters. The trench is not a pocket or a cavity. It is a landscape extending for thousands of kilometers, forming connected habitats along its floor and slopes. Water allows movement, but only for those equipped to endure its weight. Distance is measured vertically as much as horizontally, creating separation more absolute than most land-based extremes. Other extreme environments often allow escape, at least in theory. Organisms may retreat deeper, burrow, or migrate when conditions shift. In the trench, conditions do not ease. There is no shallower layer that remains safe for those adapted to depth. The environment remains consistent from moment to moment, enforcing specialization without compromise. This makes the trench unique among Earth's extremes. It is not defined by episodic stress, but by permanent constraint. Life here does not wait for relief. It adapts fully, shaping every system around conditions that never relent. That depth, pressure, and scarcity combine across such scale is unmatched elsewhere on the planet. Reinforcing this uniqueness is the trench's relationship to the rest of the ocean. While connected physically, it remains biologically distant. Exchange occurs slowly, filtered by forces that remove all but the most compatible forms of life. The result is an environment that feels separate without being sealed. When compared to other extremes, the trench does not simply appear harsher, it appears more complete. It represents an endpoint where multiple limits converge and remain fixed. In that convergence, life persists quietly, occupying a space defined not by temporary hardship, but by enduring depth and scale. Far from the ocean, beyond the surface of Earth itself, scientists look for patterns that repeat across environments rather than places that look familiar. Trenches offer one such pattern. They demonstrate how life responds when energy is scarce, pressure is immense, and change is minimal. These conditions do not belong exclusively to the deep sea. They appear elsewhere in quieter forms. Icy moons within the outer solar system are often mentioned carefully in this context. Beneath thick shells of ice, bodies such as Europa and Enceladus are thought to contain oceans sealed away from sunlight. These environments are not replicas of Earth's trenches, and comparisons remain tentative. Yet the similarities in physical constraints invite attention. Darkness persists. Energy arrives indirectly. Pressure increases steadily beneath kilometers of overlying material. The trench shows how pressure, when constant rather than fluctuating, becomes something life can incorporate rather than resist. Organisms adapt their chemistry, structure, and behavior to exist within compression rather than fighting against it. This principle does not require oceans or salt water specifically. It requires stability, where pressure remains predictable and energy input remains low but steady. Life may organize itself around endurance rather than speed. In the deep ocean, pressure shapes biology quietly, influencing proteins, membranes, and metabolism without dramatic transformation. The same physical laws apply beyond Earth. Any environment with thick ice, deep liquid layers, or buried seas will impose similar forces on molecules and structures. Trench research provides examples of how life responds when those forces never lift. What remains important is restraint. Trenches do not prove that life exists elsewhere. They do not predict its form. They simply expand the known range of conditions under which life can persist. By showing that complexity can survive in darkness, under pressure, and with minimal energy, they widen the conceptual space within which scientists ask careful questions. The deep sea also emphasizes how little information is required for life to function. Vision disappears, movement slows, systems simplify without failing. This reduction suggests that life does not depend on richness of input, but on consistency. Where environments remain stable over long spans, even limited resources can support continuity. Trench research reinforces the need for caution when drawing parallels. Earth life evolved within a specific chemical and historical context. Even when physical conditions resemble those elsewhere, chemistry may differ. Temperature ranges, available elements, and energy sources may not align. Similar pressures do not guarantee similar outcomes. What trenches offer instead is perspective. They demonstrate that life adapts inwardly as much as outwardly, adjusting its smallest processes to fit extreme settings. They show that survival does not always require abundance, light, or rapid change. It requires compatibility with conditions that remain steady. In this way, trenches contribute to broader science without extending beyond evidence. They do not answer questions about life beyond Earth. They help define how such questions are approached. By grounding speculation in observation and emphasizing limits rather than possibilities, they encourage careful framing. The deepest ocean does not point outward with certainty. It looks inward, revealing how life responds when stripped of nearly every familiar advantage. That response, measured and quiet, becomes part of the foundation for thinking responsibly about life elsewhere. Knowledge about the trench advances slowly, not because curiosity is lacking, but because access is rare and constrained. The environment itself limits what can be seen, measured, and understood. Every attempt to observe the deepest ocean must pass through layers of difficulty that shape the information returned long before interpretation begins. Technology reaches its limits quickly at extreme depth. Pressure restricts the materials that can be used, the size of instruments, and the duration of deployment. Cameras record only what falls within narrow frames. Sensors measure specific variables while leaving others untouched. Batteries drain, memory fills. Even the most advanced equipment must simplify the world it observes, selecting certain signals while ignoring countless others. What returns to the surface is always a filtered version of reality. This filtering creates unavoidable gaps. Most trench missions last hours or days, capturing moments within environments that change slowly over years or centuries. Life that remains still, hidden, or distant goes unrecorded. Organisms that avoid artificial light or disturbance may never appear on camera. Behaviors that unfold over long timescales remain invisible within short observation windows. Observation bias follows naturally. Researchers tend to sample areas accessible to landers or submersibles, leaving large regions untouched. Locations near slopes or sediment plains are visited more often than narrow crevices or complex terrain. Species drawn to baited instruments appear more frequently than those that do not respond. Over time, patterns emerge that may reflect sampling methods as much as biology. This bias shapes understanding subtly. What is seen becomes familiar. What is unseen remains undefined. Absence of evidence does not indicate absence of life, yet it can influence expectations and models. Scientists acknowledge these limits openly, adjusting conclusions to reflect uncertainty rather than filling gaps prematurely. Partial understanding defines trench science. Individual adaptations are documented without knowing how widespread they are. Relationships between organisms are inferred without full ecological context. Chemical measurements reveal snapshots rather than continuous cycles. Each discovery answers one narrow question while leaving larger structures unresolved. This incompleteness is not failure. It is a condition of studying environments that resist observation by their nature. The trench does not yield data freely or quickly. It reveals fragments, separated by time and distance, requiring patience to assemble without forcing connections. Mystery remains not as a void, but as an honest boundary. There are forms that have not been seen, interactions that have not been measured, processes that have not been traced from beginning to end. These unknowns persist alongside what is known, shaping how conclusions are framed and how questions are asked. The deep ocean teaches restraint. It reminds science that understanding does not always arrive through accumulation alone. Sometimes it advances through recognition of limits, through careful distinction between what has been observed and what has not. As exploration continues, knowledge will expand gradually, shaped by improved tools and repeated visits. Yet, even then, the trench is unlikely to become fully familiar. Its scale, stability, and isolation ensure that some aspects will always remain beyond reach. What remains unknown does not diminish what is known. It provides context. In the deepest place on Earth, mystery is not an obstacle to understanding. It is part of the environment itself, persistent and quiet, waiting patiently beyond the edges of observation. In the trench, space does not fill quickly. Vast areas of the seafloor remain sparsely inhabited, not because they are unsuitable, but because energy arrives too rarely to support large populations. Life spreads thinly across the landscape, separated by distance rather than crowding. Encounters between individuals are uncommon, and that rarity shapes how ecosystems function. Low population density begins with scarcity. Food falls are unpredictable and often widely dispersed. When nourishment reaches the bottom, it may support a small cluster of organisms before being exhausted. There is little advantage in maintaining large numbers when resources cannot sustain them. Over time, populations stabilize at levels that match the slow rhythm of input, neither expanding rapidly nor collapsing suddenly. This spacing influences behavior in subtle ways. With few neighbors and infrequent encounters, aggression offers little benefit. Defending territory requires energy that cannot be easily replaced. Competition for dominance wastes effort without improving survival. Instead, most interactions remain minimal, defined by brief contact and swift dispersal. Life continues quietly alongside other life rather than against it. Predation exists, but it unfolds without the intensity seen in richer environments. Hunters move deliberately, conserving energy. Prey species rely less on escape and more on avoidance or endurance. Without dense populations to exploit, predators cannot afford excess movement or repeated pursuit. The balance settles into a system where efficiency matters more than advantage. These conditions produce survival-first ecosystems. Every adaptation prioritizes persistence over performance. Growth slows, reproduction becomes infrequent, energy storage outweighs speed or strength. Even sensory systems favor awareness rather than confrontation. The trench does not reward dominance, it rewards restraint. This calm balance is reinforced by environmental stability. Conditions change little from day to day, and the absence of seasonal cycles removes pressure to compete during brief windows of abundance. Instead of racing to secure resources, organisms adjust to long intervals of waiting. Patience becomes a functional trait, encoded into behavior and physiology. With few disturbances and limited interaction, ecosystems organize themselves without rigid hierarchies. No species overwhelms the system. No rapid booms create sudden crashes. Population sizes fluctuate gently, responding to long-term patterns rather than immediate events. The result is an environment that feels quiet, not empty, sustained by steady equilibrium. Even when food does arrive in larger amounts, competition remains subdued. Organisms gather, feed efficiently, and disperse. There is little need to exclude others when resources cannot be monopolized for long. Sharing becomes a byproduct of limitation rather than cooperation. In this setting, balance emerges naturally. Life occupies its place without urgency. Survival unfolds as continuation rather than conquest. Each organism fits within the narrow margins allowed by the environment, taking only what can be replaced over time. The trench reveals an ecosystem where competition fades into the background, not because life is gentle by nature, but because the environment shapes behavior toward conservation. In the deepest ocean, calm is not imposed. It is selected, slowly and consistently, until it becomes the defining rhythm of life itself. Deep beneath the surface, time settles into a different rhythm. The trench does not experience the frequent shifts that shape most environments. Temperature remains remarkably consistent, hovering just above freezing year after year. Heat from the sun never penetrates, and currents at this depth move slowly, blending water masses until variation softens into steadiness. This thermal consistency stretches across vast spans of time. While surface oceans warm and cool with climate cycles, the deepest layers change only gradually. Ice ages pass overhead, greenhouse periods follow. Yet the trench floor remains largely insulated from these fluctuations, buffered by kilometers of water that absorb and redistribute change before it can reach the bottom. What arrives does so gently, diluted by distance and depth. Seasons do not exist here. There is no winter or summer, no cycle of bloom and decline tied to sunlight. Biological cues linked to day length or temperature never develop. Instead, the environment offers a continuous present where conditions today resemble those of decades before. Without seasonal pressure, life is shaped by constancy rather than response. This predictability influences how ecosystems organize themselves. Energy input remains low but steady. Physical forces behave reliably. Chemical gradients change slowly, allowing organisms to fine-tune their internal processes to narrow ranges. There is little need for rapid adjustment or flexible strategies when the surrounding world offers few surprises. Over geological time, this stability becomes a defining feature. While continents drift and oceans open and close, trenches persist along plate boundaries, maintaining their depth and character. Sediments accumulate gradually, recording Earth's history in thin layers rather than sudden shifts. Each layer settles calmly, preserving continuity rather than interruption. This enduring consistency separates the trench from many other extreme environments. Deserts expand and contract, polar ice advances and retreats. Even deep forests respond to long-term climate variation. The trench responds too, but on far longer timescales, smoothing abrupt changes into almost imperceptible trends. Such stability does not imply stasis. Evolution continues, chemical processes unfold, geological forces remain active, yet they operate within narrow bounds, guided by slow rates rather than sudden events. Change occurs, but it accumulates patiently, allowing systems to adapt without disruption. It is important to distinguish this environmental steadiness from individual lifespan. Organisms may live longer or shorter lives for many reasons, but the stability described here belongs to the setting itself. The trench offers a consistent stage upon which life unfolds, independent of how long any single creature remains upon it. Predictability at this scale allows for specialization. Life evolves to match conditions that can be trusted to persist. Adaptations become deeply integrated, shaped for an environment that rarely demands reconfiguration. The trench does not require versatility, it rewards compatibility. Across millions of years, this calm persistence gives the deep ocean its quiet character. not dramatic, not static, but enduring. The trench remains one of Earth's most stable habitats, defined not by absence of change, but by the gentle way change is absorbed. In that steadiness, life continues, synchronized with a world that moves slowly enough to be learned and then relied upon. Some life in the trench carries a sense of deep continuity, not through size or strength, but through form that has changed only gradually across immense spans of time. These organisms are not frozen in history, yet their outlines reflect a pace of evolution shaped by stability rather than disruption. Slow evolutionary change emerges naturally in environments where conditions remain predictable. When temperature, pressure, and energy availability vary little, the urgency to adapt quickly fades. Traits that function well continue to function well. Small refinements accumulate, but sweeping redesigns become unnecessary. Over generations, natural selection favors consistency rather than novelty. In the trench, this process preserves lineages in quiet ways. Body plans persist, sensory systems remain simple, metabolic strategies retain their efficiency. These organisms are not ancient in the sense of being unchanged, but they are conservative, carrying forward successful arrangements with patience. Evolution continues, yet it moves like a steady current rather than a breaking wave. Such persistence does not imply weakness. On the contrary, it reflects compatibility with an environment that rarely demands radical shifts. Where upheaval is rare, survival favors designs that endure without adjustment. Over time, these designs become deeply integrated, shaped by countless generations responding to the same constraints. Lineage preservation becomes visible through continuity of form. Some trench organisms resemble distant relatives found in shallower waters, yet their differences are subtle, structures are softened, functions are streamlined. Adaptations appear as refinements rather than departures. This continuity suggests that once a lineage becomes well suited to the deep, it can persist there for extraordinary lengths of time. The absence of dramatic change does not mean absence of evolution. Mutations arise, selection acts, yet the outcomes remain restrained, filtered by conditions that reward reliability. Evolution here is quiet work, focused on maintaining balance rather than exploring extremes. This persistence also shapes biodiversity. Instead of rapid turnover, species remain present across long intervals. Extinction occurs, but slowly. New species emerge, but often closely resemble their ancestors. The ecosystem retains a sense of continuity that contrasts sharply with more dynamic environments. What stands out is the lack of drama. There are no sudden explosions of form, no rapid radiations driven by opportunity. Instead, life settles into patterns that prove sustainable. Persistence becomes the measure of success. These ancient lineages remind us that evolution does not always chase innovation. Sometimes it safeguards what already works. In the trench, time stretches so widely that survival depends less on adaptation speed and more on long-term compatibility. Across millions of years, these organisms continue their quiet existence, shaped by conditions that ask little but demand consistency. Their persistence does not announce itself. It unfolds steadily, generation by generation, forming a living record of how life can endure without spectacle. In the deepest ocean, ancient lineages persist not because change is impossible, but because it is unnecessary. Evolution remains present, subtle, and unhurried, leaving behind forms that speak softly of time, stability, and survival carried forward without drama. The trench functions less like a battlefield and more like a threshold. It marks a boundary where conditions shift so completely that only certain forms of life can pass beyond it. Depth, pressure, and scarcity act together not as forces of destruction, but as criteria. What survives here is not stronger than elsewhere, only more precisely matched. As water descends, it carries organisms, particles, and energy downward. Yet very little completes the journey. Most life forms adapted to the upper ocean cannot tolerate the gradual compression, the fading food supply, or the absence of light. They do not fail dramatically. They simply stop functioning, filtered out long before the bottom is reached. In this way, the trench shapes its ecosystem by exclusion rather than confrontation. This filtering is quiet and persistent. There are no sudden barriers, no visible dividing lines. Conditions intensify smoothly, testing biological systems incrementally. Each additional layer of depth narrows the range of viable designs. Structures stiffen or soften. Metabolism slows. Sensory priorities shift. Only those combinations that remain stable under cumulative pressure continue downward. What arrives at the trench floor represents a refined subset of life. These organisms are not descendants of conquest or competition, but of compatibility. Survival here is not about winning against others. It is about meeting requirements imposed by the environment itself. The trench does not select for aggression, speed, or dominance. It selects for endurance and balance. This selective survival shapes the community without constant struggle. Species coexist within narrow margins, each occupying a small ecological role defined by what it can tolerate. The absence of many potential competitors is not the result of active exclusion, but of environmental sorting that occurred long before. By the time life reaches the deepest zones, conflict has already been resolved by conditions alone. Seen this way, the trench becomes a living filter, continuously refining its inhabitants. Change enters slowly, tested layer by layer. New arrivals must align with existing constraints or fade quietly away. Over time, this process produces ecosystems that feel sparse yet complete, composed entirely of organisms that belong. This perspective reframes the trench from a place of extremes to a place of precision. Every organism present reflects countless moments of selection, not through struggle, but through alignment. Each trait carries evidence of what has been removed as much as what remains. The awe inspired by the trench arises from this clarity. It reveals how environment can shape life without force, how complexity can emerge from limitation. The deepest ocean shows that survival does not always hinge on competition. Sometimes it depends on fitting so exactly that nothing needs to be opposed. Standing at the end of this filtration process, the trench hosts life that feels distilled. Forms are reduced, systems are efficient, interactions are minimal, yet the result is not emptiness. It is a quiet completeness, achieved through layers of selection that operate patiently over time. In this role, the trench becomes more than a location. It becomes a lens. Through it, the principles of life appear in their simplest terms, not as conflict or conquest, but as continuity shaped by unwavering conditions. The living filter of the deep leaves behind a world that inspires awe, not through excess, but through restraint refined across the longest depths imaginable. Long after instruments retreat and signals fade, the trench continues in silence. Its rhythms do not pause when observation ends. Life unfolds without record, guided by forces older than attention. In the deepest ocean, existence does not depend on being seen. Most of this world remains untouched, not by design, but by distance and depth. Vast stretches of seafloor have never felt the light of a camera or the vibration of descending machinery. Sediment settles as it has for ages. Water moves slowly across familiar paths. The environment continues with or without interruption, shaped by gravity, pressure, and time rather than curiosity. Within this quiet, creatures live out entire lifespans unnoticed. They feed when food arrives, rest when it does not, and reproduce according to rhythms shaped by patience. Their bodies respond to conditions that have not changed within a human lifetime. No presence marks their passing. No absence alters their course. Discovery, when it happens, does not create these lives. It briefly intersects them. A lens captures a moment. A sensor records a signal. Then the connection breaks, and the trench returns to itself. The organisms remain, unchanged by recognition. Their existence predates observation and continues long after it ends. This separation offers perspective. Much of Earth's life unfolds beyond the reach of constant witness. The trench makes this truth visible by scale alone. Its size ensures that only fragments can ever be known. What is measured represents a sliver of a world that remains complete without measurement. In this sense, the trench stands as one of the planet's quietest continuities. While surface environments respond quickly to presence and disturbance, the deep responds slowly, if at all. Traces linger, but influence dissipates. The broader system absorbs moments of contact without yielding its character. The creatures living there are not waiting to be found. They are not hidden by intention. They persist because the environment allows them to, not because they have been catalogued. Their lives hold value independent of explanation, unfolding according to biological needs rather than scientific timelines. Time behaves differently in such a place. Days pass without markers. Years accumulate without reference. Life progresses at a pace that mirrors the stillness of its surroundings. Continuity becomes the defining feature, uninterrupted by cycles of discovery and neglect. As exploration advances, knowledge will expand in careful increments. Yet even then, most of the trench will remain unseen. This incompleteness is not a gap to be closed. It is part of the environment's nature. The deepest ocean was never meant to be fully observed. In the end, the trench does not conclude its story. It carries it forward quietly, layer by layer, moment by moment. Life continues without witness, sustained by conditions that do not ask for attention. Far below the surface, beyond light and sound, the world endures, unchanged by whether it is known.